Well, hello, welcome. This is the next installment of Project MGA. And we're getting places finally. It's a little bit embarrassing. I think it's almost been 2 years now since the last video. I've been filming stuff in the meantime, but just not got around to putting it up on YouTube. Part of the reason being I moved house, part of the reason being just life in general. But right now we're still in the midst of the COVID pandemic. Luckily here in Queensland, Australia, we seem to be getting off okay so far. We're in restrictions, have come out of restrictions, but other parts of the country are not so lucky. So I hope wherever you guys are, wherever you're watching in the world, you're all safe and well. It's obviously a pretty scary time, but here we are for the 1959 MGA. Due to the fact that it's just been so long since I've given you an update, I'll just take you all the way around it again. I've got a little montage of when we actually put the body on. The last video that I uploaded was starting the engine, which started, and yes, I'll spoil the mystery, I had already started it before a video of that, so I knew it would work. I've just got around to installing the windscreen just at the weekend past there. It all got re-chromed. I've just got to sort of still tighten up the bolts, but it all seems to be fitting quite nicely on that front scuttle panel, whatever you might call it. Because I moved house, I had to put the panels on, the wings on. These are just loosely snugged up right now, so there is still some gaps and things like that. I've obviously still got to do the piping, although I quite like the look of it without the piping. But I think it's probably more of a waterproofing thing and hides the gaps. I just installed, I'm on project wiring right now. I've installed these just in the last couple of days as well with the dust seals on. I've left the chrome rim bezels off because I've still got to do some headlight adjustment, and so these are, the way it works is these little screws here have some springs on them at the sort of 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock position, and then I believe you aim the headlights at a fixed point and you can move these to cant the headlight inward and outward and up and down. So before putting the trim on, because the chrome trim is a real arse to take on and off, I've just left them off. The wiring, I started doing the wiring inside the engine bay here, starting to sort of neaten it up and things like that. Most of the main stuff is done. The last video I was talking about getting this refurbished. I did indeed. I got this sent away to New York of all places. Well, that's a good 12 months ago now. And the capillary line was filled with the fluid, the diethyl ether or whatever the chemical is there for the water pressure, and a new oil pipe as well. I've just snugged in the wiring down there. That one goes down to the brake switch, and then that bottom loom there heads out along the driver's side underneath the cockpit to get to the fuel tank and pump and everything at the back here. You'll see that the body went on pretty easily, and there was a little bit of a catch up on the driver's side over there. It was just catching just in that corner there, and I had to sort of bend it a little bit, give it a little bit of persuasion, gentle persuasion with a bit of wood. Pedals were in minus accelerator. That main wiring loom coming through with the grommet. We've got a lot of terminals obviously still to sort out. Some bulbs there that go to the main beam, the ignition light and the indicators. Handbrake works. Had a real problem bleeding the brakes, but that was just my error because I actually hadn't fully adjusted the brake shoes, so I was basically not getting any pressure. So it took me several months mucking around and wasting fluid. I went for powder coated wheels, which I think looked quite smart. I was really always planning on chrome, however I don't know the history of this car, and if there is any water or any rust that gets in behind the chrome, I've been advised that it's kind of they can break and you don't really know what's going on. So I decided to go for powder coating just now. I've got another spare set of wheels if in the fullness of time I did want to get them chromed, I could, but it is a costly undertaking. So I think right now, where the budget is starting to get a little bit silly, I'll just stick with the powder coating. Everything else I've kind of been polishing up as I go. Obviously the exhaust pipe was not me, I got that fabricated and made up. I've left that long at the end here. This is just an outer cover sleeve on the U-clamps, the bolts. When I've got the rear bumper in place, then I can slide that in or out to get the right kind of distance, and then I'll chop the exhaust pipe. We've got all my dust seals and covers on, the rubbers on the baffle plates, or the splash seals. That's the bottom of the front valance. Again, another splash plate. All the nuts and bolts for putting that in is there. What I'm realising I have to do is I have to go along and do the piping and just make sure the wings are all nice and all the body lines and panels are meshed together, and only then can you actually put the splash plates in, because your access to some of these bolts, it's easiest to do it when the wheels are off as well, I realise. Your access to some of those bolts behind there would be blocked once you've put that front splash panel in, so I've got to wait to do a little bit of that. It's probably more a two-person job. Someone pushes the piping down, someone snugs up the bolts. I've got new wiper blades coming. I've got the original wipers, but I just need new rubber blades. So the vent covers, they're purely aesthetic because I'm not putting a heating box in here, but that's again nice new shiny. Vent demisters, I've got the grab handles to put on as well at the side here, which mount into these bolts here, I believe. I'm not going to put a top on this, but the whole thing just got re-chromed, so I've also done the top parts as well. Speaking of chrome, just going round through some of the shiny bits. The front grille is back and is looking resplendent. The problem with this is, taking another little tour, this is the new garage. I'm still getting myself set up, but I also have a big shed as well, so I've got an embarrassment of space now. I've got this little annex room in here as well for all this, is where I'm doing all the soldering for the wiring, all my nuts and bolts and fasteners, and all the lube and different bits and bobs. Spare parts for an MGA if anyone's building one and they're in Australia. I've got almost two of everything. This was the badge that came off the front grille, and it's been smashed and had a little bit of a rough life, so I'm going to have to get a new one of these. Unfortunately, these are horrendously expensive. I think it was, in Australian money, was about $75, which for what it is pretty obscene. It's been bent as well, so I suspect the front end had a little bit of a crush at one point. The wiring issue, well, it's not an issue so much. The wiring loom so far has been pretty good, but then I get onto my dashboard, and this was not a normal dashboard. This is a wooden one, and not even aftermarket. It almost looks like it's a homemade one, and because it was a race car, it had certain dials that are not needed, and it's also had certain switches, things that had been removed and taken out. So this is the reverse of it. There's a right hand drive, but essentially what we've got here is I've got the other loom for the dash, and I'm just laying everything out and just working out where I need to keep things and where I'm going to put some blanking plugs. So it's not going to be a textbook MGA dashboard by any means, but over here we've got the starter pull, we've got the light for the indicators, this is my indicator switch in here, speedo and tack. I'm not sure which way it'll be. I'll have to pop that little wooden plug here because they've blanked that up. That'll be for your panel rheostat, which is this thing here, to dim and to brighten your dashboard lights. Then we've got a couple of other things. We've got the key for the ignition, so some big wires taking all the heavy current to that. I've got 4 here, 2 of which I'm going to blank off. One will be for fuel tank and level, the other one will be oil and water. Then we've got a horn and some other snap connectors that goes to the main loom. And then coming over here, these 2 are not required. This is actually for a heater box, so what's recommended you do is you actually keep that rubber cover over that so you don't have any live, because this is bringing in voltage. So the way it works is actually the voltage comes in through these green number 4s and all goes to the back of the fuel gauge, and there'll be another one going to your directional indicator, another one going to your heater box. So coming over here, this is the map light switch. So these are the type of switches they use in an MG, are these push-pull ones. So, and I've also got, they actually have the letter on them, whether it's the wiper or the fog or the lights as well. So I've got a couple of those with the letters on them as well. So there's the back of the dials. So what I've got to do is basically work out where everything goes and how the wiring fits. Then I'm going to make my wooden blanking plugs. In here I've got to do a bit of a repair as well because it's all a bit cracked. So in here we're going to have lights and wipers, and then I'll blank off the rest of that. Those two I believe get blanked off. We just need one for horn. I don't have any radios, I don't have any heater outlets and like that, so it's going to be pretty minimalist. I'll try and make it maybe a bit decorative because we're going to have a big gap here of real estate where there's nothing happening. This is obviously the reverse of it. There would have been a little badge on the other underside of this. So that's the plan. I'm going to keep with the wooden dashboard, and what I'm going to try and do is, I can bring you around here, is I've got a roll of this veneer, wood veneer. I believe this is an American oak. I think I chose because I like the grain pattern in it. So what happened is they've actually put this veneer on a paper backing, which they told me didn't cost any more, but told me it'll fix the wood better and is easier to roll out. So I've got exactly a little bit of the width of the dashboard plus a little bit of extra and twice the height. So I've actually got enough for one if I stuff it up or to do a couple of tests. So when I've got that all planed down and sorted out and all my blanking holes in, I'm going to unfurl this. I'll do a couple of little tests to see what oils I like, and then I've got to get some special contact cement or glue, and I'm basically going to try and fix the veneer to the front. It might work, it might not, we'll see how we go, but the important thing is to get all my wires in position so that there's no stretch and there's no tension, and then essentially that marries up to the wires that are in the cockpit here. So we've got the bringing power, that green, and then we've got one to the ignition, which is the, I believe the white and the brown, and the K goes to the horn, so you can't see that. So they're the main power wires, and then over this side on this loom, these are the directional indicators and the low beam switch, and then these lights over here will be high beam behind the ignition switch and my indicator bulb. So we're getting places. This has been over 4 years now, this project, so if you are following on at home, I apologise for lack of videos. I'm hoping to still get this done under the 5-year mark, which was kind of what I was thinking when I took on this project, because I've got young kids and moving houses and COVID, and I'm making excuses, but lots of things have got in the way. But we are we're tracking well. At least we've got 4 wheels on now and an engine that works. So I will press on. The next couple of months I'll try and get the wiring fully finished up and see what that dashboard looks like. Then we've got to do some fitment of doors and panels and things like that. Getting the boot and the bonnet all nicely dialed in so there's no edges. And with these new rubber seals that I got from Moss, they actually have got quite a little bit of height to them, and I think they need to sort of almost subside a little bit. So there's going to be a fair amount of pressure and tension to get that boot level, because it's nowhere near flush right now. So lots of just playing and finicking and just getting the tolerances dialed in. I've got the bonnet obviously as well ready to install, but one of the things I was told to be very careful of is just make sure before you put the grill in that your bonnet release works, because otherwise you've got no way of getting back into your engine bay. So I'm just going to make sure that all the springs and everything like that are nicely oiled and everything works. But fit the windscreen wipers and then we can start thinking about interior, but that's not going to be me that does that. So I just want this car driving soon, get the doors installed, and then we can do the final prettying up bits. But as I say, we'll get there. I'm going to add some extra little bits of machining and things on this channel. It's not just going to be about MGs, I don't think, because there's not enough action and there's not enough happening for me to keep uploading videos. But for instance, I've got a new mill to accompany the lathe, So I'm going to try and do some brackets and things like that and that. So my latest project on the lathe was on the back of these dials. This is the amp one, which I'm not necessarily going to install. It comes with these little knurled thumb screws to attach the plates to hold it down. So I just put a little bit of a brass on the lathe and turn these down if it can focus. There we go. So tiny little thumb screws. So I've made up a number of these to go on the back of the dials. And equally I'm going to have to try and come up with some way of making more plates. This one's a slightly more complicated one that goes behind the speedometer, but with my new milling machine I'm hoping I'll be able to fabricate some of that as well. So I will stop making you dizzy by moving the camera. I hope everyone is well, keeping safe, and please give me some comments. Let me know how you're doing in your projects. I think we're almost close to 300 subscribers, which is amazing since I haven't posted in about 2 years. So keep safe, bye for now, and hopefully I'll be back with another installment. Let's give me 6 months.